All right. Welcome to Stream Team Fest Day 3, everybody. I cannot believe we are already on our final day of Stream Team Fest. It feels like we were planning this event so long ago, and COVID kind of threw things for a loop. We had to reschedule it a couple times. So I'm glad that even through the state of the world and kind of the ups and the downs with getting back to some normalcy, we were still able to hold this event to some capacity. And I hope that you all are getting a lot out of it. If this is your first day with us, my name is Aspen Navarro. I am the Watershed Services Program Coordinator here at the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment at Texas State University, San Marcos. Long title, but gotta say it all to say I said it. And so we got a cool schedule for today. We have, first we're gonna be starting off with the Tricks of the Trade panel and really kind of giving some insight to you all through our trainers who are on the ground and have been in the game for a long time, giving some tips and some insight into how they are running some operations, and hopefully you can take a lot of it away from that today. And then our second session of the day is our Texas Stream Team Data Map and Data Viewer Workshop. Laura Parchman is going to be going through entering, accessing, and sharing data. For those who weren't here, we have been operating since 1991, so some sites have years and years and years of data. And some of those sites might be in your region and you might be interested in how to get that data yourself because our data is publicly accessible. So cool workshop lined up for the day. And then we are lastly going to leave you all with a presentation from Kelly Albus. She is presenting on how citizen scientists are changing the who, when, where, what, and why of water. She'll be talking about her research that she did a couple years back, some published research on comparing Texas Stream Team citizen science data to state professional water quality data. And the results were really remarkable from our citizen scientists. So everybody should be proud of themselves. Not that we doubted anything, but it's great to see it in publication form. So she'll be kind of talking about that and some other research that she is working on as well, and we are working on with her in collaboration with some tampling. And I'll leave you on that note, and you'll have to find out the rest by attending it because it is as interesting as it sounds. So we'll go ahead and get started for the day. I'm going to kick it off to Sandra Ariz Mendez, and we'll conclude for the day and go over how to access some recordings, as well as the goodie bags. So stay tuned if you can through the day. And Sandra, you are good to take it away. Go ahead and advance the slide, Claudia.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Sandra Ariz Mendez. I'm the Senior Watershed Scientist here at the Meadows Center, and I will be moderating this panel. So the title of the panel, as Aspen mentioned, is Tricks of the Trade. And so it's designed and intended to allow some of our more experienced Texas Stream Team citizen scientists and trainers and group leaders to share some lessons learned from their experiences with Texas Stream Team so that newcomers attending the conference or even folks that are considering joining Texas Stream Team as a citizen scientist or a trainer or a quality assurance officer don't have to reinvent the wheel. So we have some outstanding folks on the panel today. They are passionate about water quality and what they do, and we're so glad they could join us today and are willing to share their experiences. So we'll kick off this panel with some brief introductions. If you would please spend just a couple of minutes introducing yourselves, tell us about your group, where your group is located, your group name, how many members are in your group, and if you can approximate how long your group has been active. So we'll start off with that, and let's kick it off with Rachel. Rachel Sanborn, will you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm the, I was the volunteer coordinator for the San Marcos River Rangers. I'm still working with them, but we actually have a new replacement. Adam Bergman will be taking over as trainer and group organizer. Our group started in, I believe, 1987. So we're close to your 30 years, but not quite. And we run about 70 to 80 volunteers a month at our sites. And we have about 30 sites now that lead from the headwaters of the San Marcos River all the way down to Prairie Lee. And we do several sites on the Blanco River as well. Not today, though, since the water is very high and up everywhere. But having said that, you know, despite droughts and floods, we do have a really incredible group of volunteers who go out all the time and take samples and sometimes are impatient when the parks are closed and things like that. So particularly during the pandemic, we actually had so many members who did not want to quit. We just rearranged sites and put them on any place that was public access so that they could continue testing. So we continued getting data during that time when most things had shut down.
Great. Yes. All right, let's move on to Todd Running from the Houston Galveston Area Council.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, Todd Running. I'm the manager of the water resources programs here at HGAC, and we've been involved with Texas Stream Team back when it was Texas Watch. I was lucky enough back in 92 or 93 to be in the first class of trainers trained by Dave Buzan. And then
wow.
Constant Zahner. So we go back, and I've been, you know, trainer, quality assurance officer, as well as coordinator for Stream Team. And so this is one of the programs that's really near and dear to my heart. And it's really a big part of the outreach that we have under our Clean Rivers program here. And we use that as kind of a focal point. And currently in this, you know, that number goes up and down. We have about 100 monitors, 100 sites, I should say, in our HGAC region right now. And I think that's about 110 volunteers that are out there doing this work. And it's just really invaluable for us. And it allows us to, you know, collect data from sites that no professional monitors are doing, and really augment data in areas where professional monitors are, because they are collected at different times of the week, different times of the day. It's been really great for our professional program as well. So we're excited to continue to be a part of it, and look forward to the next 30 years of citizen scientists out there helping us monitor water.
Great, that's good to hear that, you know, that collaboration with the professionals. All right, let's move on to Christopher Morris with the City of Dallas.
Yes, so I am Christopher Morris. I work for the City of Dallas and Stormwater Departments. For the City of Dallas partnership with Texas Stream Team, we started in 2009. At that point, I was actually still technically at the zoo. I wasn't at Stormwater yet. But about 2012 to present, I've been the lead trainer / the lead for the Texas Stream Team. I get a couple of coworkers here and there to help me out with some of my projects, but it's mostly been me throughout the years. As far as sites, I have about 27 active sites that I can keep, you know, 12 data points throughout the year. I've got a couple of different schools, preparatory, Montessori schools and stuff like that, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, to do some odd samples here and there for my projects. I have probably about 45 like steady members. They're from my Aquatic Alliance, my friends of various lakes. Like I got the Friends of Bachman Lake, I got the Friends of White Rock Lake, and a couple of different groups from the Master Naturalists. Like my main group that I have are the Master Naturalists at the North Texas branch. So if you guys are from that chapter, shout out to y'all. I've got a couple Cross Timber members, and I've got a couple Blackland Prairie members. And then I think that's all my stuff. Yep.
All right. Yes, our Texas Master Naturalists are pretty active across the state. So it's good to hear they're pretty active there as well. Okay, and then we'll finish off our introductions with our very own Desiree Jackson.
Hi, my name is Desiree Jackson. I'm the Vice President of Bobcat Stream Team. Bobcat Stream Team is the Texas State University student chapter of Texas Stream Team, and we've been partners with Texas Stream Team since our founding in 2016. We averagely train over 20 monitors per semester, so within those 3 months. And we don't actually have sites of our own that we take them to, and they wouldn't be like Bobcat Stream Team monitors. After they get trained with us, we divert them to local partners such as the San Marcos River Rangers with Rachel, or Adam Berglund, or Texas Stream Team, and they start monitoring on the site with those groups. But they do get trained with us. Most of our trainees are students with Texas Stream Team because we are focused on students, but we're open to the public. So we also get to train, like Christopher said, Texas Master Naturalists, other community members, and then future river rangers as well.
All right. Yeah, our Bobcats Texas Stream Team is pretty active here in the area. So we coordinate with them pretty closely and try to include a lot of their officers in our work study programs and those types of things here at the Meadows. All right, so let's go ahead and start with some of the questions that I will present, and then I'll ask each of you to just go around and spend a couple of minutes providing some responses to those questions. That would be great. All right, so what advice would you give to a citizen scientist that is interested in coordinating a monitoring group? Rachel, we'll go ahead and keep the order. We'll go from Rachel to Todd to Christopher, then Desiree.
So if someone is interested in starting a group, I think that a lot of the things that you mentioned yesterday about making sure you have like your admin people at top, that you have somebody who can coordinate stuff, somebody who can look after equipment, and someone to handle the data management. You don't necessarily have to have 3 people to do that. For a while, our group, we just did it with 1 for a while, but as the group grew, it became really quickly obvious that we needed to have a few more personnel to handle that kind of stuff. So, and there are a lot of people who don't necessarily want to go out and test, but they're quite willing to do data management. You know, everybody has their little place in this. And I always quote this was from my actual data manager, from my equipment manager. And she pointed out that the one thing that's really good about Texas Stream Team and the water quality monitoring is that it takes a really big problem and it breaks it down into little manageable pieces that we can all go out for an hour and take some testing. Somebody can be in charge of the equipment that takes an hour of their time, maybe every week. My data manager, unfortunately, has a big load of stuff most of the time. So hers is a little bit more of a contribution, but she doesn't really want to be involved in other kind of stuff. She prefers to do the data entry stuff. So I do think it's real important to find those kinds of people who are willing to help out your organization. And I stress this a lot, is that we want to make it manageable for people. If you have a ton of data, maybe you need 2 data managers so you're not overloading a volunteer and something like that. And that kind of carries over also to our volunteers. We try to make it as easy as possible to get them involved by having trainings regularly. We make it as easy as possible for them to pick up equipment and do it at their convenience, because then you do get better results. So I think that, you know, having that coordinator at the top to kind of organize it, remind people, answer questions, that it makes a big difference to have that kind of leadership at the top.
Great, thanks, Rachel.
Well, I would echo exactly what Rachel said. You know, she's exactly right in everything. And the only thing that I would really add is to make sure that the group that you're thinking about developing has kind of a mission. What are your goals with the data that you're collecting? Why are you collecting it? And then make sure that when you've got those data managers and the QA officers and those people doing that work, that you're doing something with that data, and that your volunteers in your group get to see what's happening to that data, that there's something, an action that's being taken as a result of their monitoring. Who is that data being shared with? Is it maybe the local Clean Rivers program partner? Is it, you know, a local municipality? But make sure your volunteers understand what's happening with that data and it's being used for something.
Great, thanks, Todd.
Yeah,
Christopher?
yeah, there's going to be a lot of echoing, but I would basically say, as if you are one of the, either you're the lead or you're going to be the data manager or the equipment manager, one of the best kind of advice I could give is probably just take deep breaths Just kind of take it at a little bit of a decent pace. Because there's always going to be these times where there's going to be stress numbers. If you're the equipment manager, there's going to be stuff that's going to be out of date, or you're not going to get enough funds for this, or you're going to have to write a grant for this. You're going to have to get, scholarships for that. Or if you're in a municipality, you got to wait for budgets. And if you put in for a 3-year budget every year and you're like, hey, can I get my money? And they're like, no, not this year. So there's a lot of setbacks with that. Another thing I would put is lots of caffeine. There's going to be some of these times you're going to have late nights, whether you're inputting data from tiny little spreadsheets onto the computer. If you're the one that's going to be entering all the data for your guys. Also, there's going to be times that you're out there and you want to sample, but it's torrential rain, so you got to wait in your car. Hopefully you've got your DO sample already fixed, so you got your 4 hours wait time. But and then the last part is since we all work in water, go with the flow. If something's happening wrong, just kind of sit back and see what's going on, try to analyze it, see how you can do something better. And then some things are just going to happen. So you just kind of have to, let it happen, see how you can do better.
Great. Christopher, are you a one-man show or do you have some assistants?
So I would like to say I'm a one-man show, and most times I am, but I do have my 2 coworkers, Maritza Figge and Sarah Ziegenfuss, and they help me out with a couple of different my trainings. Definitely whenever I go out and I do our sampling for our city sites, I have one of them out with me as basically a partner, and for safety, because I could take a wrong step on a wet rock and fall right into the Trinity River, and then you guys will see me right down there in Houston. And then also it makes things go a lot faster. When I'm doing my trainings and stuff like that, and there's a couple of people that want to be solo projects, I'm like, no, invite like a kid, like your son or daughter, or if you've got a parent unit, or if you've got a friend or a coworker, because definitely training and your monitoring goes a lot faster if someone's doing like the pH and connectivity at the same time that you're running the whole long DO. And then of course, if you've got the core set, the probes, then you're just like 5 minutes aside, bam, bam, bam. So, but if you got the wet chemistry kit, it goes a lot faster if you've got a partner. And it also kind of makes it a little less boring if you're out there and you're sitting around waiting for your DO to go 3 minutes. You got someone to talk to.
That's for sure. So, we've done made some revisions to our core manual, and we've included in there, we've strongly recommended or urged our citizen scientists to implement a buddy system for that reason, not only for safety purposes, but it does help things flow better. So great. I'm glad to hear that you agree. All right, Desiree, what about what advice do you have?
I definitely agree with Todd. Start off knowing what your goal is, what you want to accomplish on your streams or waterways. It just makes everything a lot easier. Your citizen scientists know what you're trying to achieve, and it doesn't have to be anything big, like trying to solve some huge world problem. It can just be, establishing trends or discovering trends in this waterway. And then second, don't go at it alone. It gets very overwhelming because you might think that it's just, okay, let me train some monitors, but it goes beyond that. It starts off with outreach and education, getting the word out after you train your monitors, keeping them organized and having a schedule of where they're going to monitor. And then beyond that, the data. So it's really nice to have like someone who is a leader with you that can do separate things. Like you train monitors while someone works with the data, someone works with the equipment, someone gets the word out, things like that. And then third, I would say identify interested individuals. So this could be people like you that are like interested community members that are concerned about water quality. It could be students 14 years and up, whether that's in middle school, high school, or college level. And it could be a lot of the times too, like teachers will get their students involved. And so, yeah, just identify interested individuals. That's how you're going to help grow your monitoring group. And then definitely have your leaders there to help coordinate everything.
All right. Yeah, I think there's plenty to go around. So I like your approach of, sharing the workload. All right, so let's go on to another question. So I've heard this a couple of times myself, just as staff here at Texas Stream Team, but I often get asked, why do I need to go to this site every month if the result, the monitoring results are the same? So what would you say to a citizen scientist that expresses frustration or concern, with seeing the same water quality result?
So I can start on that one. I always refer back to Mike Beers when he was at a water monitoring conference one time, and he said that that's the biggest complaint that he'd heard of. But what he stressed was that you want that water to stay the same. If you start noticing big changes in it, then you have problems. So we really want unexciting sites that pretty much stay the way they're supposed to be, or maybe show improvement maybe, but you don't want to have any massive changes month to month. And you really do have to be there month to month to get an idea of what's going on. In our area, a big rain that comes in can drastically change, the banks around the area, what creeks are feeding into it, that kind of thing. So we, really want our monitors to go out regularly to get familiar with their site and to notice those subtle changes that are occurring along the banks, or if they see new housing, going up along in the area. Those things are all important. But like Mike said, basically you want to hope that you're not seeing great big drastic changes month to month. That's a bad sign, So it may be a little boring when you go out if it's always the same thing, but that's very reassuring. When I look at the data, I'm happy to see the same numbers coming in.
Right, and I would say the same thing. People have to understand water quality is a long haul proposition, right? The changes don't happen in watersheds overnight generally. And we've got to remember, when we do the integrated report at TCEQ, when that's done, we're looking at 7 years of data, sometimes more. And so, we want that long data record, and it's really important to have that monthly monitoring go on. And it is kind of boring to see the same numbers time after time after time, but that's a good thing. And the other thing I would say is, Texas Stream Team is so much more than just those numbers that are collected data-wise. Those field observations are invaluable to the professional monitors and people that do assessments. So like Rachel said, if you're at the stream month after month and you're seeing some changes in, some of the physical geography, the topography that's happening, our roads being built where there's limestone being laid down as a base and running off into the stream. When we get that kind of information at HGAC, we can compare that to some of the professional monitoring data over the long haul. And maybe we see pH is getting lower and lower at a site. We can go back and start looking at some of that data that's been collected by the volunteers to say, oh, well, could be a very good reason that we're seeing that information. So while the data might look boring, all of those observations that they take are really invaluable, and they can pay really close attention to what's going on at their locations and around those. So that's really important.
Sandra, if I could just step in and say one more thing. The other thing about having regular monitoring is that seasonal changes and things like that really need to be noted so that we can predict them in the future. And, this is Texas and our weather is dramatic. So being able, if you have someone out there regularly and they note those changes of what it looks like in winter, what it looks like during drought periods, then we have a much better picture of what's coming in. Those will be slight changes, but they're still notable.
Absolutely. Yep. I think as citizen scientists continue to monitor a site, they become intimately familiar with their site, and they know what looks normal and what looks drastically different as well. All right, great input. Christopher?
Yeah, I would definitely say boring is great. So especially if you're going to be on the long haul on some of these sample sites, like I've been doing Kidd Springs, I want to say, since basically I started out in stormwater in 2012. And so that was right in the midst of Texas's long drought. I think it started about 2010, went all the way up to 2014. Then there's a drastic difference as you go to 2015, 2016, and then definitely the last couple of years, like 2017. If you're down there in the Houston area, you guys got a lot of rain called Harvey. So that would cause a lot of your sites to change a whole bunch. We got a little bit of your rain. You guys hogged up a whole bunch of that, but definitely it refilled up a lot of our reservoirs. So with the stream team, you want to establish that baseline with your creek. You kind of want to get intimate with it, learn what its, ins and outs are. As Rachel said, there's going to be seasonal changes. And so you're definitely going to have basically 9 months out of the year. It's going to be that Texas summer where you've just got that heat coming on. You may have a little bit of that rain coming into it. And then, hey, we had Snowmageddon this last February. That was kind of crazy. And I don't know anyone who was out there going sampling, but hey, if you were, there was definitely some different, temperatures to be getting. And if you had water that wasn't frozen, you definitely sample it, see how clear it was going. So yeah, boring is great because if you don't have that boring data, if you don't have that baseline, you're never going to see those outliers and stuff like that. That stuff just kind of pops. One of my favorite things is because up here in Dallas, we have 2 basic biomes. We've got that black clay, the Houston clay. And then we also got the Austin chalk line, which comes through there right around what we call White Rock Creek or White Rock Lake. So we've got a lot of that limestone seeping in there. So a lot of our sites that are on that area are very high in the pH. Whereas you go over to the more clay soils, it's very acidic. We've got a lot more of the conifer trees and stuff like that. So it's a little bit easier to kind of differentiate your site between those different things of the hydrology, the soil composite, even the riparian zone, which was I like the new riparian training curriculum that we got, because it definitely helps people learn that these different types of plants, whether they're facultative, obligative, and stuff like that, these different ephemeral wetlands are going to change how my creek is sampling.
Yep.
That's what I wanted to really point out, what Christopher was saying. Boring is great, but there's so many other certifications that you can do to spice up your relationship with your site. Like riparian evaluation is amazing. It's super fun. And I think it adds a lot of information into what's going on around your area because vegetation has such an impact on water quality. And so that's really fun to do. And you get a little booklet with all these plant species names and things like that. Also, if you have the time, you can think about adding another site onto your list to monitor. It gives you something different to do if you are really bored with those quote unquote boring results. And then if you do have drastic results on the other spectrum, I would reach out to professionals and experts in your area or your city and come up with ways on how we can improve the water quality in this area if the results aren't boring, if they're drastic. But yeah, I think additional certifications really help just spice up that monitoring site and can give you even more insight into what's going on. But like everyone's saying, boring is great. Boring is good. Water quality, you want to be thankful that nothing crazy is happening on your river. And yeah, we appreciate you guys being out there on a monthly basis, being committed to going to that particular site over and over again and helping us establish that baseline. So thank you all, citizen scientists, for doing that.
Great input. Thanks, Desiree. Yeah, I think one of the things I've come across as well is not only, does a citizen scientist, is a citizen scientist concerned that things are pretty monotonous across the board, but the other extreme, like Desiree mentioned, is that things are changing. And so sometimes, a citizen scientist will go out in the morning on one event, and then they'll go out at noon or later in the afternoon the next time. And so those will present different results in and of themselves just because of the timing. So that's one of the things I point out initially when they start to see differences. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. So how do you keep your citizen scientists engaged in your monitoring groups?
I think that is the trickiest thing. You will have people who will be engaged no matter what. You could leave town and they would still keep going. I do think that there's other ones that you need to keep interested. And I think a lot of it is we have to remember they are volunteers. They do this in their spare time. So you need to be understanding about school schedules and family problems and whatever else may come up. They may take off for 6 months or a year and come back. I have many who come back after a few years. We try to one, we send out a reminder when their turn comes up to test. That gives us a chance to interact with them, tell them what's going on in the community, what's happening in the watershed that they might be interested in, other volunteer activities, just a little bit of connection. That helps a small bit, every month we send them something. We do try to once a year, do some kind of thank you gift, whether it's beautiful pictures of the river or, things that might be handy when they're out in the field, something like that, just to let them know that we do appreciate what they're doing. Even a quick thank you note is usually, sufficient to just let them know that you do appreciate the time they're putting into this. And I had to always come back to the idea that you do want them to feel like they are working on something that's useful to the community, as Todd pointed out, why you're doing this and why this data is helping us, protect the river in our case. And just letting them know that, it has an important part of what we're doing in the long run.
Yeah, we have the same type of take on it at HGAC. We try to, when they turn in their data, we try to make that a point of contact. And like we mentioned, and Jason said it well yesterday, this is really a human relationship thing. And so you kind of get to know your monitors and what they need. Like Rachel said, you've got some people that are going to monitor no matter what, for as long as that they can do it. They're going to be out there doing it. Some people need a little more hand holding. So when that data gets turned in, that's an opportunity to make a brief connection. It might be just an email back. Thanks, great work. Or really dig into the data and have a little discussion about that with the volunteer. And then, we've tried to do an annual, get together of some kind. And it's been really tough doing that this last couple of years with COVID, but that's always really helpful. And of course, we do our own newsletter, and we try to highlight some of the volunteers that we have in our area for, whether it's longevity or something interesting they found or whatever, to just kind of make some human interest stories and give those little tips and tricks for monitoring things that make things easier, that kind of thing. But it really is just kind of reaching out and whether it's a phone call or a quick email is really helpful for a lot of the volunteers.
Yep, it sounds like we're all on the same page. Our newsletters, can highlight some of, the work that our volunteers are doing. Little incentive never hurts. We try to have giveaways and try to remain active in our social media platforms and, have giveaways and those kinds of things. Christopher, go ahead.
Yeah, to kind of dogpile on all of that stuff, that definitely to keep them involved, and especially since, the last question was everyone's complaining about how their sites are boring. Well, since I work for a municipality, I love those boring sites because it actually shows that the city's out there doing its environmental work. We're actually taking care of things. But the other thing I like to do is when I train new monitors, I try to get them a site that's personalized towards them, whether it's a creek that runs through their backyard or where they work or a park that they like to go to, something that has sort of a personal impact to them so that this is their creek. This is what matters to them. So then, yeah, if I've got a fish kill in a creek or I've got an SSO, which is a sanitary sewer overflow, or we've got a water main break, my citizen scientists are the first ones to actually know because they're living on that creek. They know at 11 p.m. when it happens. I can't get a crew out there till like 1 a.m. So definitely they're out there. They're already got me my DO. I've already got some connectivity scores and stuff like that. And as you'll learn a little bit later when Kelly gets on, citizen science data is pretty much accountable towards our professional data. I mean, we have a little bit better Hodge probes and the calorimeters and stuff like that, but you can't fail that wet chemistry, stuff like that. As long as your chemicals are in order and stuff like that, batteries they die out. If it's raining, your batteries get wet, your instruments are whack. So as long as you've got those wet chemistry kits, you can do almost any testing you can do. So definitely helps out quite a bit. And yeah, bring it back, personalize that creek because they will let you know everything that goes on there. I know where the different woodpeckers are, whether you've got teal or wood ducks or mallards. And some people can even distinguish the mallards from the roan ducks. And I'm just like, yeah, I know that much ornithology, so I'm happy. I'm just making sure that, the turtles aren't eating your ducklings, which that's nature. You know what happens. I'm sorry, but turtles got to eat too.
great perspective. If the water quality monitoring is boring, we're doing our job. I like that. Desiree.
So for Bobcat Stream Team, because we are a university organization, one of the things that we really like to do is go beyond water quality monitoring and get our members being active stewards. So we like to participate in river cleanup or cleaning up our community. We like to do education and outreach events so that we can take our knowledge and spread that with the community. And it really just helps create like this bond between our monitors and the area that they're working in. It makes them want to go out more and protect it more and know that they're doing really good work. Also, keeping monitors interested and engaged. Other than being active stewards, I would definitely say like, instead of having them just work with your organization, get them networked out into other organizations like SMRF or Texas Stream Team, the city Parks and Rec, so that they're not just working with you. It doesn't seem like I'm just working with one organization. They get to be a part of every little facet that's helping out the environment. I think that's all. If I think of anything else, because I feel like I had something else on my mind, I'll add it in there.
You know, one of our advantages when we work with students is that we do tell them that this is in the field experience. This is something for our high school students. We let them know that we'll be glad to write them letters of recommendation when they go to college or for their applications. We actually have a scholarship that's given by the Lions Club in town that's for water activity and water protection in town. So we can incentivize a lot of our high school students by saying, you know, this is an option. It's not going to pay for much. It's $500, so it may cover some of your books, but it does give them a little more incentive on that end. And I do know for the college students, particularly those who are, you know, busy and have left, being able to just say, you know, have me write them a letter that says, you know, they've done this for our community, they put in all this volunteer time. You know, we think they are an exceptional student in that way, unlike a lot of students who don't do any kind of volunteer work or anything like that. And I think that can be helpful too as an incentive to that age group if you're working with college students.
I would also like to add, one of the things our monitors say a lot is like, okay, I've gotten trained, but I still don't know exactly what I'm doing or like the chemistry behind everything. So I think diving into, okay, when you're taking dissolved oxygen, you know, dissolved oxygen or the oxygen can get into the water from aquatic plants, from the atmosphere. This is what you're measuring. This 6 to 9.5 is a good range, things like that. I think when you dive deeper into the education aspect or what the parameters are actually showing, it keeps people monitoring because they know, okay, I know what I'm doing. I know how this is all working and why it's important.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
too. So temperature has to do with all that DO. So when you have those seasonal changes right around the spring, right around the fall equinox and stuff like that, I've got a lot of people that not only test the creeks behind their houses, but they've got little ornamental ponds behind their house. And like, yeah, I want to do a little bit extra water quality, either to kind of brush up or just check what's going on in my little pond. But when that temperature changes and got that pond turnover, definitely the DO drops and you're like, well, my temperature is staying the same or it's only got a little bit. And that's how you know that the colder water holds more oxygen, the warmer water holds more carbon dioxide. So it actually gives them kind of a more real world example of what's going on with their stuff.
Yeah, I think if they can relate, you know, a measurement or a parameter to a personal, more personal hands-on type experience, then, you know, it means a little bit more. Okay, so let's move on to data. I know, you know, some of you have mentioned, you know, goals and having specific objectives with your water quality monitoring, having a purpose. So maybe we could go around and describe how some of you have either used data or know of citizen scientists that have used the data, how that has transpired, what is it used for, kind of thing.
So in our case, since we are coordinated with Texas State University, we are lucky to have all kinds of professors that use our data, you know, that they go in and use it for background information. There's a lot of students and graduate students that use our data for that kind of stuff. Most recently, we began testing on a creek that was slated for a wastewater discharge. The landowners got word this is where it was going to go in. This is where they were going to be dumping their wastewater. And we went in immediately and set up monitors at sites we could access just to start getting just what it is now before any of this wastewater treatment comes or wastewater comes into it. And the case actually was, we challenged it with TCEQ and got a contested hearing. And they were not able to use our data because it's not professional from one of the 3 labs in Texas they accept it from. But we had pictures and we had, I guess, 9 months worth of background data on it. And they were able to submit it as part of the evidence. And in combined with the professional lab services that also did testing, we were actually able to change the wastewater permit in that area. So things like that can be really useful. Yesterday, I guess it was Travis that talked about when we did E. coli testing on the river, because we had a problem there, we were able to use our monitors to collect data for about 3 months in order to prove to the city and to Texas State that there was an E. coli problem there. So it definitely can come in handy that way. What we have noticed most with our data on the river is when we first began, we thought dissolved oxygen was going to be the critical thing that we would worry about that the most. But what it turns out to actually be is the dissolved oxygen has stayed the same over 27 years. It's very little fluctuation. But what we have seen is a lot more sediment coming into the river. So our conductivity numbers, we could actually spot the years that it began going up. And it is tied a lot to how much rainfall we get, how much erosion is occurring upstream in the hill country behind us. But that is one of the things that our numbers were very clearly showing that.
Real quick, Rachel, did you see any differences during the pandemic when things were, people were not allowed to come out?
We did not really notice a whole lot of difference. In the summer months, the water was much clearer. I mean, all our visual observations were definitely much better. There was more plant life. We had extreme growth of our endangered species. The wild rice plant just began taking over. And also on that thing of field observations, we also saw a lot more wildlife, including river otters for the first time spotted. It's not that we don't think they were there before, we never saw them because there was always too much activity on the river to see them. But as far as our actual numbers, we did look really carefully to see if we could make any point on it. But no, they basically stayed pretty much the same. But things like turbidity and clarity and stuff like that, definitely in the summertime when you've got 10,000 people in the river, you're seeing a difference compared to a Monday morning, for example.
Right. Great.
So for us, that this citizen data, that volunteer data that comes in, we can't use like Rachel mentioned, we can't use that in our assessments, and they don't use that for the integrated report. But we find it really useful to augment the professional data out there and to get us data that there is no professional monitoring done in certain areas. And what it's done is allowed us to look at some of those areas that are kind of on the outskirts of jurisdictions that do monitoring. And if we find issues and we know that monitoring needs to be done and some professional monitoring needs to be done, that's where we tend to try to expand and cover by professional monitoring in the future. And so it gives us those gaps. But the other thing is we have found a number of problems over the years because of volunteer monitoring that professional monitoring did not catch at all. And one example, and it came up in the chat yesterday, Ann Rogers brought it up, was on Spring Creek on the north side of Houston. One of our volunteers was out there and all of his parameters were the same all the time. Everything looked good. The pH was good. The DO was good. All of those things looked great. But he noticed that over the period of about 3 or 4 months, he hadn't seen any critters. There had been no frogs, there had been no turtles, or nothing around. And so, he had the wherewithal to, send that in and call and say, this is what I'm seeing. And we sent professionals out there and found 2 wastewater treatment plants that had high levels of chlorine coming out. One was completely by accident. They had a leak that they didn't know about that was discovered. And the other was putting out large amounts of chlorine because they had a fecal coliform problem. And so that wasn't being dechlorinated. There are other examples like that there are problems detected that just wouldn't have been without the volunteer monitoring. So it's really a a valuable thing. Thankfully, that stuff doesn't happen a lot, but it gets caught when it does.
All right. Christopher, we've got time for one more response and then we're going to have to wrap it up.
Okay, so as Rachel and Todd have said, in a municipality, we can't count a lot of the citizen data as in our reports. We had to have what a NELAP certified lab is, which is the National Environmental Laboratory Accreditation Program. But basically, monitors are our eyes and ears. There's a lot of different tributaries that aren't even named in Dallas that until it hits Ash Creek, I don't know what's going on to it until it hits one of my monitoring sites for the actual city. So having these citizen monitors all throughout the city in pinpoints there helps me out, especially during the pandemic. I did lose a lot of sites that were associated with schools or the Boy Scout groups or where people work and stuff like that. But the sites that were by the houses, now that the people are stuck in their houses, they're just staring at their creek all day and they'll notice when it turns brown. And I found quite a few different construction sites that thought, hey, you know, we could probably get away with this while everyone's at work during a normal kind of year. But now there's just a heavy amount of sediment, concrete waste going into the creek. And my citizens are just sitting there going, hey, something's wrong. This is not right. And so definitely you can find out a lot more of that pollution just by having all that there. And then by the baselines too, like you were saying before, Mr. Todd, that the chlorine, he's noticed not just the analytical data, but the subjective kind of comments. That's why I always tell my people, you know, notice if there's a lot of ducks one season, or if there's a lot of turtles or a lot of fish, or even if you are great enough to know species, know your different species, because there's a couple of different birds that have just been declassified off the endangered list. They're no longer available, like our woodpeckers. So
Great. This is all great information. Desiree, I'm gonna bypass you on this question since we're out of time. And I know you guys are more in the training realm than you are in the data analysis realm. But I think this has been a great discussion, great input from everyone. You guys have tons of experience. And I'm going to put in a quick plug in the event that you didn't hear Jenna's message yesterday about Texas Stream Team working on a book to, you know, expand upon and make sure we, you know, capture all of these individual stories. Todd, it's great to hear that you were around way back when Dave Buzan got started. And I know Rachel's been, well, all of y'all have been around for some time and have some really good information to contribute. So we will definitely be reaching out to everyone soon. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Aspen.
All right, thank you, everybody. We are going to go ahead and take a little bit of a break now. We will be right back at 11:55 for our next workshop session. If you have any lingering questions, maybe for the panelists or just kind of general questions about groups, feel free. We have a Q&A icon. We're checking it all throughout today. There's also a chat feature, and I see some of y'all utilizing it. So feel free to pop in any questions there, and then we will be right back at 11:55. Claudia, can you go ahead, stop the recording or pause it, and then pull up the slides, please. Laura going over the data map and data viewer updates or in workshop in general on entering in data, accessing data, and sharing data. Laura is our GIS and Data Management Associate here at the Meadow Center for Water and the Environment. Take it away, Laura.
Well, thank you all for coming to the show. I was mentioning to Sandra earlier how I was in the middle and I was used to being the middle child. But now I think this is good scheduling because you guys got the data session in between two awesome panels. So maybe you'll forget this one. I don't know. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, please. This is an overview of what we're going to go through. Essentially, I just want to give everyone a quick tour of how to find our data, how to access it, and then how to enter data, and then again from the data viewer create reports that you can share your data with either the rest of your group or people outside of your group. Next slide, please. I really do want to encourage you to ask questions during the presentation. Well, it's not a presentation so much as an interactive workshop, right? So please ask questions in the Q&A, and Aspen is going to, got like hair or something in my mouth. excuse me, Aspen is going to make sure to ask those questions for you. So with that being said, wait, should we go to the next slide? I don't remember. Yeah, go to the next slide. Okay, yeah. So I am about to share my screen, but I want to reiterate that this is the only link that you need, whether you want to find the data map or the waterways data viewer. It's the texasstreamteam.org. So with that being said, I'm going to start sharing. All right, we're good. So that is the link that will take you here.
Not seeing a screen, Laura.
Oh, because I have to say share. There we go. There we go.
There you go.
Always an extra button to click. All right, so texasstreamteam.org is going to take you here. From here, you click on this lovely icon to get to the data map and the data viewer. So first, we're just going to take a quick tour of the data map. This is publicly accessible to everyone, so you don't need an account to use it or to access it. So what you're looking at here is a map of our sites, inactive and active. Our active ones are the blue or the gray with the blue outline. And you can scroll to zoom in. You can use the buttons down here at the bottom. And you can search for sites by site ID. Let's choose a site. And then it's going to take you, not zoom you in, but you can use this pop-up window to continue zooming in until you can get a better idea of where that site is. So you can look at this map to see if you are, for example, a new citizen scientist and you're looking for a place to monitor. You might want to request an inactive site like this one right here. So that is one way to use the map to find inactive sites that we can activate for monitoring. And all that happens is you let us know your intention to start monitoring at that site. You collect your data, and the month after you've entered your data, that site will then go active because we update this map once a month. So if you entered data in September, it would have shown up for this October update. And we keep those dates up here, updated October 6th. And we note when the water quality data was updated. They're not always the same. They try to get them to be the same, but that doesn't always happen. Another thing that you can view here on the map are the tests that occur at each site. So maybe a site is active, but not necessarily for every test. So you can go ahead and choose which, those are bookmarks. You can choose which layers you want to see. So you can remove the sampling sites, which shows you the active, inactive status. And then you're looking at this legend over here that tells you what the sites are. So if you want to just narrow in and see where advanced testing is happening, just disable the eyeball on these layers and you can see where advanced tests are happening. And you'll have to zoom out because we don't have as many, obviously we don't have as many advanced sites as we do core. But that gives you an idea how to tool around and see. Let's see, equalize this again. There we go, those were E. coli and advanced. Got some in Honey Creek. What else? Am I missing anything that we talked about there, Aspen? As opposed, or
No, I think that hit everything.
yeah, there's some. This pop-up is going to give you the basic information, and you'll note that it just has like the site location information, the ID, the name, what the status is, the lat long, the segment that it's on, the TCEQ segment. Now, if you want to see the data that is available for those sites, we have this water quality data file that is linked to here in this panel here on the right. And it will open up our Google Sheet. Now we link to this Google Sheet so that primarily because we can keep this open to the public. And if you have a layer with like 50,000 data points on it, it kind of makes it hard to load. And also that when you have that in an Esri file, a feature layer, that data isn't very easily available for download, especially to just to the random public. So we have it here in this file, which is publicly accessible, and you can download it by clicking File and Download. You have the option to choose what your file format is going to be. Now, because this is every data point we have. So from way back in to our first sample collection in 1990, but we really started at 91, so right there. All the way up to present day last month is on this sheet. So I recommend you go ahead and download it so you can do, if you wanted to sort it or filter it, or just remove the data that you're interested in, just because it'll be a little quicker than operating on the cloud. But you can do that. From my perspective, it's not as intuitive and easy as is in Excel, but I am an Excel user. If I don't have 3 or 4 Excel documents open in a day, it's probably a rare day. And for that reason, I recommend doing that in Excel, but you can filter if you wanted to see information for one site. So you have to choose create a temporary filter. So you're not manipulating the data in a way that is going to affect anyone else. This is just your view and it'll last for as long as you have this file open. So now you've enabled the filter option. You're going to click on this triangle here. And this is where I say it's not as intuitive. The first thing, if you're just looking for information on one site, you want to clear, because those check marks mean that every one of those sites was selected. So let's just put in our site. We want to see the information for this site and then click it, make sure that the check marks, and you can add in new sites too. We'll just go with this one for now so it doesn't take as long. And then click OK. And there you have the options limited to just this site at Old Bastrop Highway. And if you filter and then you download, you're still getting the whole thing. It doesn't give you the option. I thought it did, but I tested it this morning and I got everything. So another reason why you might want to just download it to begin with. Now you'll note that this doesn't have all of the information that is associated with each data point, with each record. If you're looking for something that's not here, which the columns are limited because of size and loading times. But if you are interested in something, that is when you would contact me at Texas Stream Team, the Texas Stream Team email address, and ask me for additional information, which I will be happy to provide. So, let's see, we went to the data map. Now let us log into the data viewer. Again, use this home page or use this page to access the data map and the login for the data viewer, because that is going to provide you the most up-to-date link. Sometimes when our data viewer changes a feature, the URL gets changed a little bit. It happened before, so I recommend you just bookmark that page and then you can click here and you'll know you're always going to the most updated, appropriate site to enter your data. I think it's taking longer because I'm on Zoom. It's giving me like a little heart attack, like, oh no, it's not gonna work. But look, it worked. Okay, so this is the home page that you will land on, also known as the data page. So you'll see that your page tabs up here. The home and the data are just the same tab, but if in the future we want the homepage to present different information, we have that available to us. So what you're presented here with right now is all of the data. You'll see what it's telling you right here in the upper left of the data window, what you're seeing. So you can see the data that you've entered, you can filter it that way, or you can go back to see all data.
Hey, Laura,
Yes.
can you just step back real quick, because we've got a few questions on this, and show people how to access the data map and the data viewer from the homepage directly? So type it in on your search, texasstreamteam.org, and taking it from there. Just
Oh,
one
sure.
more time.
Let me, I can move. How do you? So I'm gonna go type in, is it txstreamteam.org? I already forgot.
You gotta spell it all out. I know it's weird. Our email is txstreamteam, but our website is Texas Stream Team.
Just like you say it. So that's going to take you here if you type in texasstreamteam.org. And this is the landing page for our program where you can access, basically if you have any Stream Team questions, this is where I would recommend that you go. And if you can't find the answer here, that's when you can reach out. But the data viewer data map is the second icon from the left. And this takes you to our data page. So this gives you the two buttons for going to the data map and then the data viewer. So again, the data map is open to the public. The data viewer is our data entry database that requires a login.
And
That
who
works.
gets that login, Laura? Who gets the login for the data viewer?
Oh, good question. Thank you. So because we are grant funded and we're operating on limited funds, we have a small number of accounts and each account costs us money. So we are trying to encourage group accounts, shared group accounts. There are two types of accounts. There's user accounts and then there's the group leader accounts. And we're trying to encourage sharing of the group accounts so that more people have access to the data for the group, as opposed to just the data that they enter. So we're not really issuing individual accounts because we're running out of them, and we still want people to access the data. So we're encouraging the group leaders to make their group accounts accessible to everyone. And we have found a way to create a username, because the usernames have to be an email address, but we found that that doesn't have to be a valid email address. So for group leaders who are reluctant to share their email address with just anybody for whatever reason, we can create a username that's like reflective of the group, and you can use that as the username and then share the account information with the members of your group to access. Does that answer the question?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
And thank you for asking. So, okay, yeah, we've logged in. We're ready to enter data. And the way that you do that is you just click this new button here. And it's going to present you with the test that we conduct. And you would select those. I would like to just take a moment to point out that the observations only, no test conducted, is available if for whatever reason you get to your site but you are unable to actually conduct the water quality test. You can still make the observations that are presented on that form, and you can, so it's still a valid record, but for whatever reason you weren't able to do some of the other tests. That is going to pull up this pop-up that has all of the fields that you're going to fill out. I won't spend all the time filling out this one. I have already done one before, but notice that all of the fields marked with the red I think it's an asterisk, but it kind of just looks like a red dot to me. But usually they're asterisks. But whatever it is, that red notation, if you can see it, it won't let you submit if you don't fill in that dot, so, or that field. But you fill in your information, you click enter, and then you're presented with this details screen, which shows you, I think I just selected, yeah, I just selected the site, not the data record. I clicked on the wrong one. So yeah, this is what you're presented with after you enter that record. And I mention that specifically because if you want to attach a site photo, you have to do it from here after you've already entered data for that record, because it has to have something to attach a photo to. So it's not in the actual data collection form that you fill out in the beginning. You have to submit it, and then you can attach a photo if you have one. But once you click enter, you can review that information here, and you may find that, oh, I entered the wrong time, I entered the wrong depth, whatever it was. You click edit, and you can make changes to that. Or you can just click on the little pencil next to each field and make a change there. If you want to submit a photo with your data, that is where you select related. And you can upload a file that you have on your computer. And now they have added the option where you can just drag and drop a file. And I don't know off the top of my head what the limit is, but I can find that out. But it's easy, drag and drop, or you can open up and browse to where you have the image saved on your machine. Let's see what else. Recently, we did update to this new UI, and that was necessitated by changes on the back end at Salesforce, which is the platform that our database is built on. And for security reasons, certain accounts had to transition to the Lightning user interface, and that was pretty much out of our hands. So I hope that we've kind of caught, I think we've caught all of the little anomalies that occurred because of that transition. But anytime we're aware of a major change like that, that's going to happen, we're going to announce it in a newsletter. So keep your eye there for any exciting data announcements. See, I talked about sharing the group accounts. What I want to talk to you too also about is, how are we doing on time? I've already forgotten how much time I have.
I'll give you a warning. You're good. Keep going.
Okay. She's like, don't stop. The data lists. So if you manage a large group and you have a number of people, you can change how these lists present themselves. So if I just want to see, for example, one person's site or just one site, I'm gonna see, how did I do it before? Okay. Forgive me while I try to remember how I did this.
You got about 10 minutes, Laura.
Okay, I'll just move on then. I can come back to this because I do really want to go over creating reports. And like I mentioned before, we have the two types of accounts. The group leader accounts are the accounts that have the ability to create reports. So if you are interested in doing that, you might want to hit your group leader up to share the account information, or just ask them to do a report for you. But let's just go over how to create the reports. So you access that with the reports tab. And you can see here, you have access, you can view all the reports that are in this Texas State Stream Team folder. And you can either create an entirely new report, or you can take a report that has already been created to use as a template if you look at it and see that you like all of the fields that are in there and that works for you, maybe you just want to make a couple changes, you can hit edit. And you'll want to save as, and it'll give you the option to give it a different name, which you can do, and save it. Now, I recommend if you leave it in this default folder, that means anybody can see it, which shouldn't necessarily be a problem, but maybe you want to keep that to yourself for now. You want to go and click all folders, select private reports, and that ensures that it's just visible to your group with that login. So now it's saved a copy of that, and what you can do is add or remove columns, fields as you wish. So you'll see that there's the outline. This outline is showing you all the fields that are going to show up in your report and the order in which they're going to show up. And you can move the order around. So if you want water odor over water surface. And your preview window is going to change. You'll have to rerun it if you want to see a preview, but that's not necessary. So the outline shows you the fields. If you wanted to add a field, you can type in the search box and start typing the name of the field, and it'll give you the options to add. So let's just add that one for fun, and it automatically adds it down to the bottom. So if you want to move it, that would be when you do so. Filters. This is going to limit what data you are viewing, and you can filter it by, if you just want to see the data for one site, like I have here, the site ID equals 8233. So that limits, I just want to see that site. I do want to show you a little bit of filter logic. So let's just do another filter for site ID. And I'm going to say 15492 again. Click apply. And if you click run, you'll notice that nothing happened. And that's because you want to make sure your filter logic is right. And that basically boils down to and or. So in this case, you want to see anything that is site 8233 or site 14592. So click here, this little triangle, to get to the logic, and just replace and with or. So you can make some pretty complicated reports with this, with filtering the parameters. You can filter between, you know, if you only want to see anything that has DO higher than 9.5, for example, you can do that here. And I do want to note that I can create reports for you at any time. Like, I'm very happy to do that. It's actually one of my favorite things to do. So the more that I can do that, the happier you will make me. Thank you. But also, if you like to have fun like that too, you can create your own reports. And like I said, you can make one report to use as a template and then just go in and change the site ID to be something else. So you can have a report that shows you a report for each site that you monitor. And I would like to note that every time you run the report, it's using the most updated information. So even if you only run the report every 6 months, you're still getting that full you're getting that 6-month update. Unless, of course, you filtered for time and you only want to see the current fiscal year, the last fiscal year. You can change these dates to be a specific range. If you wanted to see between October 31st, 2019 to October 31st, 2021, you can do that. So a lot of different ways, and I'm also happy to have a one-on-one session to either help you build your own report or just go over anything else that is on the data viewer. I think I covered all of the main topics. except I didn't get to go over the list views like I wanted to.
I was gonna say, Laura, I think it would be cool to show people what you can generate from a report, like graphs and charts. I know you have 3 minutes, but it would just be cool for people who maybe don't have an account to see the possibilities that an account has.
Yeah, let me show you real quick because on my account, what I have when I go home are visualizations that are built on, oh, here, I went too far, that are built from reports because you can do some graphing in the reports. Or you can just export them to Excel and make your own where you have a little bit, where it can be a little easier for people who are already familiar with Excel to do the graph building, but you can do this within the reporting features on our data viewer too, just as an idea. Oh, and you can export them as Excel files, as comma separated values. Those are the two main formats. I think that's it. It's a lot of information, but this is just maybe to whet your appetite or give you an idea of what's possible. And 100% ask questions, or because we're here to help.
Maybe show them the form too online where they can request data, a data report from you.
Yeah. Why don't I do that?
You got 1 minute, so 1 minute to do it. Just kidding. We can go over just a little bit.
Wait. Do I know where it is?
It is, I believe we moved it up.
Water quality data request form. Oh, it's right there under the under the buttons. So with this form, you can ask us for information, and we can tailor it to the interests that you have. So we do need to have something to limit it to, but you can choose any of these things to limit it. If you want all the sites in a watershed, go ahead and do that. Let us know what that watershed is, what the date range is that you're looking at, or if you're looking for everything. If you're looking for specific parameters, you'll let us know here. And just for our own interests to figure out where our data is being used, what the purpose of the report is. So this is a good place to go if you either don't have access to an account, or if you just don't feel like building a report yourself because you have water quality monitoring to do. This would be the place to go.
All right, and on that note, we are out of time. So if you have any questions for Laura, feel free, pop them in the chat or in the Q&A session. But now we will be taking our final break for Stream Team Fest. And Claudia is going to plop the slides up too, so you can see when we will be returning. Our next and final session of Stream Team Fest is going to be a presentation from Kelly Albus talking about how citizen scientists are changing the who, when, where, what, and why of water. So stay tuned. We will be back on at 12:30.
Thanks for listening, y'all.
Last session of Stream Team Fest. Thank you, Claudia. So I am going to turn it over to Kelly Albus. She is a Meadows Center Fellow and an Extension Program Specialist at Texas A&M AgriLife Research and Extension. We have worked with Kelly, or I have at least for the past couple of years, and I think you've been involved in Texas Stream Team way before my time with Texas Stream Team too. Lots of cool projects, lots of cool research, and I'm so excited for her to share it with you all. So Kelly, feel free, take it away. Claudia will be arranging all of your slides, so just let her know when to advance.
Okay, great. Thank you, Aspen, and thank you, Claudia, for manning the helm here on this. Thank you all for having me and for this awesome chance to get to speak to you guys about my research, which is really about y'all. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'll just a little bit, right. So this is all about how citizen science is changing, not just water science, but like science in general, kind of how we see science, who can participate in science. It's a really exciting conversation that citizen science is sparking worldwide. So I'm going to touch base on that just a little bit, and then I'm going to dig into some of the research that I did on the Texas Stream Team and some of the research that we're starting to do now at the end. So perfect, thank you. This is my information. I am actually with AgriLife Extension at the Dallas Center. We're part of the Urban Wish program. And I used to be with UNT, University of North Texas, and that's where a lot of the previous work was with, but I have recently joined the Urban Wish program, and this is my new email address. So if anybody has any questions about anything after this, feel free to shoot me an email. So if you can go ahead and to the next slide, this is the Urban Wish program. It's the Water Innovation and Sustainability Hub. So new program, new team. We're focused on uniting some of the urban water initiatives because Texas was traditionally more of a rural state, but that's shifting. And so we need to have some new water management conversations around urban policy and also getting more people involved. So we're talking about blue-green infrastructure, data science, water equity, conservation and reuse, hydrological services, and the science of urban extension. So these are some of the topics that the team will be talking on working on moving forward. And at the end, I have a little QR code. If you're interested in more about the team, use that little QR code to sign up for our newsletter, or we will have a website up and running soon. That's a whole other thing, but again, just email me if you have any more questions about that. So moving on. Next slide, please. All right, so what is citizen science? Basic definition is still in flux. I think this is one of those things that will always be debated, exactly what is citizen science. But it's also called participatory science or community science, but really it's just the participation of students, amateurs, or volunteers, any non-professional scientist in the process of scientific research. So if you think about the fact that the professional scientist really didn't exist until about the 1800s, when there was like an accreditation process, like school that you could go to become a professional scientist, then really citizen science predates all of that. But when did it really become like a popular term, kind of a buzzword? And that is more that recent growth because of technology. Quite a lot of this is based on the fact that we are now data collectors with our smartphones. Anywhere we go, we can collect data. We can get on our computers and inform data collection. We can answer questions, help with research. Technology has helped connect us all, and it helps us collect data. And this is one of the big reasons for growth in this field. But also, besides the data collection, we're starting to be able to track the impacts on society and on the educational impacts, like the knowledge gains, behavioral gains, changes in like how people behave and act and what they know about their natural resources, especially. We're seeing a lot of impacts on that. So citizen science has grown in popularity because of those impacts as well. There's a lot of resources that you can look at for citizen science. I'm part of the Citizen Science Association. I know this Texas Stream Team folks have been at that conference with me, and it's a really cool way of seeing what's going on all around the world with citizen science. SciStarter is a cool website to go to. Many of you have used iNaturalist, the Master Volunteers, Texas Master Naturalists, Master Gardeners. These are excellent examples of citizen science. Texas Stream Team, woohoo, y'all rock. Some of the best examples of citizen science. So you guys know what it is in practice, but you might not have realized the impacts that citizen science is having everywhere. So yes, go ahead and go to the next slide and I'll show you just a really quick little graphic. There's a whole field of study on what citizen science is doing for science and our society, but this is a really cool graphic. It shows from the European Union. And they said that the pillars of citizen science are scientific excellence, citizen engagement, and policy relevance. Because a lot of this is, we don't want scientists out there telling everybody what science to do. We want people telling scientists what scientists should be researching, what we want to know more about, what it is that society needs answers to. And then this kind of reflexive relationship where scientists are informed by society and then policy is informed by this co-creation of knowledge. All of this is a really different way of viewing science than from a top-down approach where these people in the ivory tower get to tell everybody else what to do. And so if you look at this little boat, this is a good, love this graphic by Franz Arnhelden. I can't say his name, but he's made this little graphic to show science gets us places, but if we invite more people into that conversation, to that narrative, to allow different levels of expertise, we move faster, we go farther, and everybody gets to be part of that journey. And I think that this is what we're seeing citizen science can do. So how does this is all changing the who and the how. And now moving on, we can see some of the what, where, when, and why. So yeah, all those W's to say, not only does citizen science give us this data collection, this is like eyes on the ground kind of data collection. We can get remote sensing data. We can do averages of what land cover looks like, but to have people actually on the ground looking at it and verifying that data, that is very valuable. Something that a scientist cannot do alone is verify that kind of data. There's also, we're filling a lot of data gaps, places that we can't get to too. If you think about it, there's places that a professional scientist might not be welcome to come take a water sample, but you know, Bob down the street, sure, come on over, you can get a water sample, I know you. You know, there's a lot of accessibility. Also places like after a hurricane or maybe some extreme weather event, like may not be possible for a scientist to get there. So having people on the ground ready and prepared to take a sample right then and there can be the difference between that initial data that tells us what really happens after an extreme weather event and data from a week later that isn't really going to give us much of a clue for next time. Also, we're informing AI. Citizen scientists are getting on there and looking at like remote sensing data of like penguins and saying, that's a penguin, that's a penguin, that's a penguin. And that helps to inform a computer when they go back, and that program now is better at recognizing penguins. So there's so many different ways that data is being informed by citizen scientists. Also, education and outreach. We're getting more people involved, whether you really care about penguins or you just like going and clicking buttons. New people are getting involved in this conversation. It's not just those people who traditionally used to do science. Now we're getting all kinds of people involved, and the more you get involved, the more you care generally. And so these are all projects too, project-based, active, changes in the community action-based things, which are really motivating for people. And there's a lot more virtual options than there used to be. So if you don't really want to go out in the community and do something, you just want to fold DNA online or look at rat brains. Both citizen science projects you can do, by the way. Those things you can be done from like the comfort of your own home. So there's all sorts of ways to get involved. And teachers, students, I've worked with a lot of teachers and students about citizen science. And again, all of this authentic engagement, this active learning gets people really excited, and students are no exception. So teachers are seeing a lot of results from that too. So all of these have impacts on the community, the amount of support the community will provide to water restoration after they've done sampling of their own, or how much they learn about how water is polluted by doing the sampling on their own. Also, this gets funding opportunities. The more people you involve, that's numbers. Numbers mean funding for most people. And we're hitting our sustainability goals, which may be the most important thing of all, is that people who participate learn more about how to help, and then hopefully are able to do so. And we're seeing changes in water and changes in air by more people being informed citizens and stewards. So that's the what, where, when, and why changing of citizen science. So what does this have to do with us? Let's go ahead and go into the next slide. So water quality monitoring specifically is a subcategory of citizen science, but it's one of the most popular and most common, because if you think about it, people have cared about water forever. It's our lifeblood. So people are going to want to know what's going on in their rivers and streams and their drinking water. And they're also going to, like, if somebody upstream is doing something to your water that you don't like, you're going to want to prove that and do something about that. So that kind of phenomenon could have been, I mean, probably been happening for hundreds of years. So this is not an uncommon citizen science practice. It may not have always been called that, but this has been going on for decades. And the data itself has been around now, as you have just seen from Laura's fabulous example of all the hard work that you guys do, not only collecting the data, but people like Laura that are sitting there parsing that data, keeping that data in a place where you can access it and get to it and use it. That is an absolutely phenomenal resource to have. And it's happening all over the country and even all over the globe. So these data sets, much like this one, are out there. And that's kind of what I started to look at with my research. And so moving on to the next slide. Water in Texas. So specifically, you guys are probably no stranger to all of these issues, but Texas is big. It's diverse, which means there's all sorts of places, some with a lot of water, some with very little, and there's all kinds of needs for that water. Population is growing like crazy. We're hit, like just the North Texas area in 2070 is projected to hit like 14 million. That is a crazy number of people. And that's just North Texas. That's just like one region of Texas. So we're really experiencing more growth than just about anywhere else in the United States. Diversity is increasing, which means that we're using water in different ways and in different amounts than we ever have before. So it's difficult to predict how to, manage the shared resource. And we're transitioning from rural to urban. So a lot of these like traditional agricultural uses are just not necessarily the uses that we're going to have moving forward. So we've got to kind of move with the times. If you look at the Texas State Water Plan, Texas Water Development Board's kind of projection for the future, you'll see that we're already in a water deficit, especially for Region C, that North Texas area. As of 2020, we already have higher demand than we do supply. And that demand is just going right up. Supplies, if we're lucky, going to stay about the same. So there's a lot of concerns with Texas water. And then, so what are we going to do about this? That's a really good question. So we'll go to the next slide. With all of these human impacts, we've got urban growth, which is aging infrastructure. A lot of that's going to cause pollution issues, some sort of, like blockage issues. Things are not water flow issues, leaks, runoff from surfaces, all this point and non-point source pollution. You guys are no strangers to these concepts, and how impervious surfaces and agricultural runoff and all of these issues are all flowing into our streams. And with the more people, you end up usually with more of these contributors. Then you end up with a loss of functioning ecosystems where you're not going to have those ecosystem services necessarily to clean the water the way that they used to, like a wetland, to remove, the nitrates and nitrites from this, stagnant water body. People are, getting rid of wetlands. We end up without those ecosystem services. So with all of these impacts on water quality, what are we going to do? And how can we combat this? Well, Texas Stream Team to the rescue, right? You guys have been collecting data for 30 years now. This kind of information can be really, really useful. This is where I started to do my research. And if we look into this kind of data, we can start to see things like trends over time. That's the beauty of data that's been collected for a long time, is that you can see what it was like before and what it's like now with the evolution of, human impacts and, the impervious surfaces, that word that I lost. All of those impacts on our water quality can then be measured by trend analyses, which can only happen if you have lovely, large, long-term data sets like the ones you guys have. So how is that wonderful data set being used? You can go to the next slide. Well, this is where I began my journey for the research on the Stream Team data and its uses. Turns out largely it was unknown. Whether or not it was being used, it wasn't being used much in an official capacity. And I found that kind of surprising because this is a very valuable data set. And there really weren't any peer-reviewed citations, any articles. It's really difficult to find how the data was being used. And so I really wondered, is it being used? And this is actually a common issue throughout water quality monitoring. Volunteer data sets are not fully utilized. This has a lot to do with researchers' perceptions of volunteer data quality. They're concerned that volunteers cannot necessarily collect data that is accurate and applicable, like the data that they need for whatever they're studying. So there's a lot of people investigating this. And so I ended up doing a long lit review on all of the studies out there that compared volunteer data to professional data to see if there was a difference. So I found 26 different studies that did this. And although most of them found a generally good agreement between volunteers and professional data, like they were pretty much the same, most of these were side by side, where the volunteer went out alongside the professional and they collected data together. And how did those work out? So there are pros and cons of these comparison studies. It's whether or not they're using the same equipment, the same sampling techniques, doing it at the exact same place at the same time. A lot of these things make it to where the data really isn't comparable. It doesn't really compare. So pros and cons aside, this is still one of the best ways to kind of determine whether or not volunteer data is of high quality. So what did I find out when I was looking into the volunteer data for Stream Team? Let's go to the next slide. First of all, this is 30 years of data. Although that was like oh, yay, we have 30 years of data. It was also like, oh my gosh, we have 30 years of data. It's a really big chore to sift through data like that. And that was actually a huge part of this research, was trying to find sites where the volunteer data and the professional data overlapped. So they could be compared. So it had to be at approximately the same site and in the same years. So finding those sites was the first step. And I ended up finding about 12 that had enough data to compare. And it was over 5 different river basins. And there's those yellow dots on the map right there. And you can see that they're pretty well spread out across the state. So it's giving us a nice variable example of what was going on. So it was 12 stations, 5 river basins, and this included years of data. So I won't bore you with all of the details and numbers involved. If you want to do it, there is a study that is out there for you to read all the lovely details that you want. I'll show you the link at the end. But for now, what were the results? What did we find out? And that's the next slide. First of all, there were a lot of post hoc constraints. I was not able to take this data and really pair it perfectly because this was post hoc data that had already been collected, not data that I collected for the sake of this study. So there was a lot of variability in time, space, and collecting agencies. Think about like 20 or 30 years of collecting where you have how much turnover, how many different people came through, different volunteers, different professionals. All of that would change. I couldn't control for it. Plus, I couldn't control for what equipment was used, what protocol they followed. The big thing about Texas Stream Team data, though, and that this is what I kind of hung my whole hat on and told my advisors I wasn't insane and I do know what I'm doing, was the fact that Texas Stream Team has a quality assurance plan in place, which means that everybody was following the closest they could to the EPA recommendations at the time, which meant that all of it should be about equal, right? Crazy, right? Well, turns out, even though I couldn't really standardize all of it or separate the months apart. So these volunteer samples could have happened, like the volunteer could have collected in March, the professional collected in October. I couldn't control for that. I had to just do it within the same year at the same site, even though these sites could be up to 60 meters apart, I found out by doing some ground truthing. And I couldn't control for season, which, you know, DO can change in seasons, pH and all of that shifts. So not controlling for any of that, just relying on this quality assurance protocol, it was still an 80% overall agreement between volunteers and professionals across the entire state for all of those data sets. So that was an amazingly high result. And I picked a smaller subset for the city of Denton, and I was able to pair those samples at the same site at the same time. And there was a 90% agreement when I was able to control for more of the variation. So this is an astonishing result. It really shows that the volunteers are not only capable of collecting quality data, but if they use the similar protocols and equipment, then there's really, as far as we can tell, almost a negligible difference between volunteers and professionals when you're talking about 30 years worth of long-term data. Because when we're talking about specific sample sets, it's different than when you massage it out over 30 plus years. So that really does inform increased utilization of data sets like this elsewhere. So all those other those programs that are out there collecting huge data like this, is it being used? And if not, this provides evidence that it very much could be, especially if there was a quality assurance plan in place and that these, like Stream Team, the volunteers are held to a standard and are able to kind of be kept up with the EPA guidelines that are following with the rest of the country, then this data is very usable for trend analyses, for climate change, to be able to see what's happening as populations grow as well. So very exciting result for that. So that is actually a big round of applause to you guys, because that is the data that you guys collected. And with the Stream Team staff managing all of that training and the QAPP, that long document that I had a lot of fun reading through. So yeah, all of that's really pat on the back for that one. And then moving to the next slide. Here are the publications. This is the accuracy. And I think, yeah, Aspen just dropped that link into the chat too. Thank you. So you guys can go and check out the full study. There was some interesting findings about pH and about dissolved oxygen, which you should go check out. That'll be your little teaser to go read the whole paper. Please don't read the whole paper, but there's a little section in there about DO that you can check out. And then there was also the literature review that I did about all of the other comparison studies. That one's on there too, if you're interested in reading that. So further reading. And then what is happening now? Moving on to the next, we are working on a new fun sampling that Sandra's been helping, actually leading the charge on with the Cypress Creek study. We've been looking at optical brighteners. So this may have been something that you've heard about or not, but optical brighteners they are found in detergents and soaps like this right here. And this is the bluing agent. So they reflect a certain, like the 365 nanometer wavelength blue light. Basically, they make things shine blue under a black light. And it's that makes whites look whiter. So you're going to find it in soap, detergent, toothpaste, paper, all sorts of places. It should be removed in the water treatment process. So therefore it shouldn't be found in our streams, even with the effluent from the treatment plants. And so the presence of optical brighteners in waterways can alert us to the presence of a human sewage contamination. So generally we usually find that by using the E. coli samples or bacterial samples, but that's kind of more expensive, it's more involved, and it's also a pathogenic bacteria. So it's potentially dangerous for especially like students or youth to be sampling for. So this is a proxy that you can sample for instead. And so I've been using this with college students, elementary students, high school students, where we're going out and collecting. And then Sandra and group have been doing it on the Cypress Creek study to determine if there are optical brighteners in water. It generally means that there's some sort of leakage or some kind of follow-up that needs to be done in that area. So optical brighteners themselves are not dangerous. They're not something that is controlled for by the EPA. It's not a limit that you can reach. All they do is indicate that there may be human water leakage into this stream or water body. So it doesn't necessarily mean there is, but what it is a red flag event to where then you can alert, say, a city official to go and sample for E. coli, or to see if there's some sort of indicator of a leakage in the area. So they really adsorb to cotton, which is what you use. You put cotton out there. Generally, we use tampons because tampons are really designed for high flow. Sorry, y'all, but it's true. And so we use the tampons, and I call it tampling. And it's actually a really simple way to do it. And so this is some of our lovely student volunteers collecting their tampons. They're samples of optical brighteners, and then we shine a black light. We use a black light flashlight, much like this one, to shine on the tampon after it's been deployed in the water for anywhere from like 2 to 7 days, usually works best. And then if it glows blue, you can tell when it glows bright blue, then you have an optical brightener hit. And so we are using, I put the link at the bottom there to y'all's newsletter that you just put out that has the videos to this that you guys have made. I thought they were great. And it shows a little bit more about the Cypress Creek study where they've been using this sampling material there too. So you can check out, it's in the y'all's Waterways newsletter. So you may have already noticed this, but yeah, that's right. You got the video in the chat. Aspen, you're on top of it. Well done. Okay, so that is what we're currently working on, and it's really exciting that the students love it, the teachers are enjoying it, and it's a fast, easy way to get people it's kind of like your gateway drug really to the Stream Team experience. And so we're hoping that with something a little bit simpler than the full water quality testing, then this gets people intrigued, and then they'll want to follow up and become full Stream Team certified volunteers. So hopefully this is, if you hear about the tampling in your area, then now you'll know what that's talking about. But I will finish there. I'll put up the next slide is the QR code for the newsletter updates if you're interested in the You Wish program and more about what we'll be doing in the coming years. So this is my email address if you have any more questions after this, and I will pause there for questions if anybody has any. And I'm gonna go.
Thanks, Kelly. If anybody has any questions for Kelly, feel free. We have 5 minutes of her time left, so we are able to shoot her any questions if you guys have them.
I see one in the chat about, has anyone tested for illegal drugs? I don't know about that, but I do know that people have been testing for capsaicin, which is found in peppers. And only humans really choose to eat peppers apparently. So it's another way of testing for human sources in the water is capsaicin, but I have not heard about illegal drugs, but possibly. I know they're testing for all kinds of things for specific studies, like this group tested for this, but like widespread, no, I haven't heard about that.
Sandra said in the chat that she believes the USGS has tested for drugs and she will follow up.
Very cool.
I'm noting your comment, George, and we will follow up with you.
Going through the chat. Y'all might have to help me get in. If there's something asked in the chat that I missed, let me know.
I think everything has been addressed up until this point.
Okay.
As far as questions, I did post the link to Kelly's study and then also a link to our data and research page, which has other studies on there too, as well as some reports. But I'm going to copy and paste your link also, Kelly, from your slide. That way people can just pop that in there too.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. We got 3 minutes. If anyone has any other questions for Kelly.
And I will say that also we're using ArcGIS, like the surveys and a lot of the same sort of Esri materials. We're trying to teach students and teachers how to use those so that they can collect data on their own. And we're creating surveys for this optical brightener sampling. And so if you're interested in collecting an optical brightener sample, let me know. And we're still kind of working out the details of how to like send them places for reading. But if you want to purchase your own blacklight flashlight to check your own samples, they're only about $40 on Amazon, $30-40 on Amazon. Got to look for 365 nanometer. But you can experiment with what works best and give it a shot if you're interested. And I just follow up with me if you're interested, and I can share with you some of the protocols.
All right, let's see. We got a question that came in. It says, no one has mentioned sediment pollution and TCQ's response to rock quarries and mineral mining along rivers. Please address examples, etc. Sandra, do you want to answer that one? You can either do it live or maybe type it in and answer in a Q&A.
What was the question again? I didn't get it.
If you, the Q&A feature came in through, says no one has mentioned sediment pollution and TCQ's response to rock quarries and mineral mining along rivers. Please address examples, etc.
Yeah, I probably don't have much information off the top of my head, but I can certainly dig around.
Sounds good. I'm gonna note this as a follow-up for us too. All right. All right, well, I think if that's it, we can go ahead and conclude Kelly's session. Thank you so much, Kelly. I feel like I learn more every time I hear you talk about this stuff, and it's so cool, and I'm so excited that we're able to get involved in the Tampling. And soon, hopefully, get our citizen scientists involved in the years to come as well.
Great, thank you. So awesome that y'all are doing this, and thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
All right. Well, everybody, this concludes Stream Team Fest. Waiting for our staff. We'll show our faces one last time. And I want to leave you all with our contact information. I know I've shared it a bunch, but it never hurts to share it some more. Our email address is txstreamteam@txstate.edu. Our phone number is 512-245-1346. And of course, our website, texasstreamteam.org. Like I said before, this came so fast, and it's a little bittersweet that it's come to an end. And I really hope that you all enjoyed it. Definitely a learning experience for us, and almost a little emotional because I've been a part of Texas Stream Team for 2 years, and this is the first time I've been able to actually be involved in Stream Team Fest. And because we are a nonprofit, we can't always have Stream Team Fest every single year. And so this is something that we want to continue to do to share bigger accomplishments that you all help us with, and just kind of bring us all together. You know, we're a big state, got a lot of people that we have had come in trained and just come throughout our program in general, into some capacity or another, whether it's a partner, a citizen scientist, or just a bystander who knows about Texas Stream Team now because of us all on the ground. So I appreciate everything that y'all do for us. I hope that Stream Team Fest was beneficial for you, and that I'm so glad we were all able to get together to some capacity. So I feel free, if you have any feedback, send it our way. We're not sure when the next Stream Team Fest would be, and now it's probably going to be in some hybrid cool format. We'll be even better with technology, hopefully by then. But we're always welcoming any suggestion, and maybe our next one will be like our 20,000 citizen scientists or something. Who knows? We're growing day by day, quicker and quicker. So our goodie bags will be disseminated through email. You all signed up through email, so we'll be sending you virtual goodie bags to say thank you for joining us. We're posting all of the recordings online as well. So if you go to texasstreamteam.org, which is listed here, you'll see the very first slide picture is Stream Team Fest. You'll just click on that, and that's where you went to register. Where the agenda is where we will have all of the recordings, and we'll have one for day 1, 2, and day 3. So if you missed anything or you want to go back and reference anything, it'll be there for you. We will follow up with some questions answered as well too. And then other than that, you guys are free to go. Thank you so much for everything you do for Texas and the environment and for us. We appreciate you so much, and we hope you enjoyed Stream Team Fest 2021. We'll stick around if anybody wants to chit chat, but other than that, you guys are good to go. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thanks for being here.
Silent claps. Make sure I didn't miss anything in the chat.
Yeah, Dr. Mace is the one that told me about the USGS study in Spring Lake where they had found, they had sampled some water and they got a hit for cocaine.
Here?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
but
And
I don't,
in the lake.
I don't know what specific study it is,
Well,
but that's where I heard it.
wow. Well, we are
I
college.
think he also said you'd have to like probably drink the entire lake to get anything out of it.
Yeah.
Quite a task.
Quite a task.
Oh, goodness. The things you learn.
I know. That's the first I've heard about that. Yeah, I have seen the studies, Chris, about birth control too.
Mhm.
Prescriptions for sure. But for illegal drugs, that's the first that I've heard about cocaine.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Your body just processes it and it goes into the wastewater system. But man,
Yeah.
I didn't think about what happens to it after.
Well, yeah, and a lot of wastewater treatment plants, some of them don't treat to that high quality level where you are treating those prescriptions too. So even though it may be going through plant, it might not always be the highest treatment type to filter out some of those prescriptions. Christopher said you can get cocaine tests at Walgreens. That would be an interesting study.
Hmm. Yeah, those at-home tests are, I don't know, accessible, but
I
Yeah,
guess you would get one to like test your kids.
yeah.
yeah.
Oh man. I was just like, why would you get a cocaine test? And then I'm like, oh, other people have entirely different lives than you, Laura.
Other people's problems.
Come home, I'm like, Boomer, we need to have a talk.
Yes, entirely different. If you had kids, you would probably be like connecting that really quickly.
Probably, huh? Or a spouse who had too much fun without me.
Now we just got to worry about Boomer and him
Nova.
eating stuff. Well, we'll hang back for a few more minutes and then we will close it down for the day.
I'm gonna stop recording now.
Yeah, thank you.